the editing suite at the post-production facilities at the Mentalist. We're here with Christopher Long. Chris Long, a fellow Brit. How are you?
Hello, mate. Good to meet you.
Good. Chris is the executive producer of the show, as well as the director of the episode that we're about to take a look at, in which we see Simon Baker's character doing some non-contact mind reading, as it's called, and also a combination of a few muscle reading techniques and idiomotor responses. One thing that strikes me about it is the fact that obviously with a scripted show like this, when you're supposedly having these amazing moments of insight and so on from Simon's character with these people around, you've got to try and make all of that link up. And in the same way that there is a moment in this scene where the guilty party makes a telling eye movement. And, you know, I'm assuming that's quite difficult when it comes not only to the casting, but actually to the execution of it, making sure that the right body language is being expressed at the right time.
Basically, in the staging of it, I try to keep it free-flowing. I try to make it so the audience can play along with it, so that it's not so obscure that the audience isn't getting it, so that, you know, when we've seen the piece before, when the piece we're about to show you, is that some of the non-contact readings are making readings that you could, as a observant person, could make yourself.
Yeah. You know, are you setting the barrier at different levels in a scene like this so that you can try and hit as many people as possible to give them that feeling of accomplishment, or? You know,
yeah, we try to. We try not to. You know, this show doesn't preach to its audience. It doesn't look down on its audience. It's a show that, you know, respects its audience, and we always want people to be a part of the show, so that if you play the whole thing back in your head, you can fill in all the gaps if you want. Right. And yet we need to be, you know, we love to have, you know, some mentalism surprises. So, you know, if I play the piece, you know, in the
Hello, we're from the
in the casting of it, I wanted to set up these first two people who he dismisses immediately as innocent by their body language and what they look like. If you see, I made her stand with her sort of shoulders. And
let's stop it for a second.
Sure.
Let's just examine what you're seeing.
They're both their body language tells him, and both their expressions on their faces. Yeah. They're not losers, but they're not the kind of people that would engage in.
Well, it's diminutive stance. Both shoulders are sloping softly. Yeah. The downward turn in the mouth and the eye contact as well. This is fear, but this is more diminutive. Yeah. So I'm assuming that was a choice.
Absolutely.
They're certainly expressing that.
In the script, we wrote him as a Casper Milquetoast.
Right, which is definitely accomplished.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, he dismisses them quickly. Right. Into it. They are non-combative, you know, don't want to be a part of it.
Yeah. So to talk through briefly, how do you direct Simon in this situation? I'm assuming a lot of it's intuitive because he seems to have absorbed most of these skills himself.
When Simon and I spoke about this scene, the one thing he said about it, he wanted it to be really free-flowing. He wanted to move around the room. It was important for me that, you know, that, for instance, we'll talk about the character Reed, that he was sitting the entire time because I always felt that this character had been off the couch in the last 10 years, apart from to get a pizza, and didn't get up for any sort of authority figure. That the Asian-American girl, Candice, had always been, you know, respectful and immediately jumped up when spoken to. Right. And that Neil was basically just this nervous Nelly type that was always there. And then, of course, there's the woman who's the wife of the local politician.
The kind of woman you would expect to meet in a furniture store in the middle of the mall. Yes.
These two are innocent. They can go.
Stick around. We're gonna need a statement.
Neil, what's the worst mistake you've ever made?
That was the eye movement I was referencing earlier with the initial breaking and looking down.
Your name? Candace. I like that name.
You do that to, I mean, I know why Simon did it, but as a real mentalist, do that to disarm people?
Sometimes it's to put people off balance. Sometimes it's to try and make a conclusion. Sometimes it's just for show. Right. You know, because it's often the case that by making a statement that may not even be correct, but doing it with enough power, that this might be for the other people that are viewing it in order to then move on to them to get somewhere with them. Interesting. You know, like almost a placebo effect, you know. So it all depends on the situation.
About the mother is just I was amused earlier when he said everyone's got issues with their mothers. Yeah. Because they do, so it's not...
Yeah, well, that's a very good statement to make. You could walk up to almost anybody on the street and say, I think it's time you forgive your mother. Right. You know, they're going to give them long enough, they'll connect those dots, you know. In this case, it's far more dramatic than that, and we get the sense that she's genuinely depressed and so on, and there's an issue. But, yeah. And right here, we're about to see something that's a very fun element of the show. This exchange that happens between Simon and the character here.
Candace, take my advice. Forgive your mother.
No, it's not quite a Russian scam, but
it's not. It's certainly not a deposit and take, as it's called. But it's interesting to see the those elements. I really enjoy those elements. For me, I look at that and I think about when I'm on stage, you know, if I hand somebody a pen or, you know, or something, like let's imagine they're making a drawing and I need to exchange these things, this is the way I do it because it's effortless and then I don't have to say, oh, can I take this back from you before you go back to your seat? I just do it because it makes the show flow better. It's interesting that even though we're in more or less the same world, and certainly the viewers of this show, if they see my show, think it's, you know, the same thing, but it's just interesting to me that such a dramatic shift of what we highlight and what we don't. But this is definitely a fun moment, and there's a lot of those throughout all of the shows with these little practical psychology moments.
Yeah, with us, obviously, we only have a limited amount of time to tell the stories, so the editing is very paced up.
Yeah.
Can you read people this quickly?
Whether or not you could really do it that quickly under that pressure and so on.
Right.
You know, I've never been in a situation where I have to find a murderer.
Right.
So I don't know,
you're
you
on
know.
stage in front of thousands of people, so it's...
yeah, so it's, you know, it's pressured, but it's different. You know, you're in control and so on, and it's not a murderer. Right. So I don't know, but let's carry on.
Maybe the headaches will stop.
I love my mother.
Oh, I'm wrong. Ignore my advice. You.
See, this is another great moment with the scripting. Ignore my advice, I'm wrong is a great statement. If it's for show.
Right.
Is that funny to you? Are you amused?
And now we're being naturally combative because she's the initial aggressor, so in order to raise that, it would help him make very clear observations about who she was as a person. So the more angry she's going to be, the more open she's going to be to really expressing what she thinks and what she feels. He's clearly no threat anyway. It's just he's not involved. Like,
yeah, he's not...
Your observation earlier about, you know, you always imagined him as the guy that hasn't got up for 10 years. Yeah, that
he doesn't have it in him.
Why'd you kill Rasmussen?
I didn't.
All right. Now you, Miss Grumpy and Entitled, what's your story?
My name is Mandy Schultz.
This is a great way of really annoying people, and I don't know if this is intentional or not, but if you begin the conversation not looking at them, by addressing them by name as you look to the floor, it shows that you're dismissive of them. So.
And disrespectful. I'll have my husband take this up with your superiors.
Mandy.
And she just does the same thing back.
You're messing with your mind. This is Sacramento. It's a big city. Your husband means nothing here.
Okay, that's enough. Agent...
Here's an interesting question for you at this point, and this is something I was talking to Simon about earlier. Obviously, the process of the interaction between the actors is very much, you know, they feed off of each other.
Yeah.
Do you find that most of these things happen naturally and organically? So, for example, her turning her head away there, was that a choice that you as the director made, or is that something that she naturally did in the moment to express that emotion?
There's something she naturally did in the emotion.
So
yeah, when you're working with, you know, when you first start to direct them and the scene starts to take shape, what's interesting is how it changes when you get the two actors together.
Yeah.
And how two really good actors will change the dynamic of the scene. So all the body language between these two who got on fabulously as people and actors, you know, they were only together for a very brief moment, and before we dived into the scene, you know, Simon doesn't even get to meet the guest stars, probably, you know, in the makeup trailer maybe, but suddenly we're on the set and we're figuring it out and we're blocking it. But immediately the chemistry was there, and her level of, you know, snippiness in playing, you know, we discussed together, you know, and adjusted. We made her more snippy than she was going to play in the first place. But no, it's basically these moments are found as we're shooting, and they're not in every take. We put them together in editing later.
Of course, of course.
We don't need a moment. Case is all but closed. Mandy here is going to lead us right to the murder weapon.
What?
Take my hands. I need physical contact to read your mind.
You're nuts.
Prove it. If I'm wrong, if we can't find the murder weapon, then I look like an idiot.
So at this point, we see one of the skills that obviously the viewer is aware that Simon's character has, which is muscle reading or the ideomotor response, the idea that if you focus on an object or a thought, there's a sense of physical, almost resistance as you start to approach the correct area.
And pulse, reading pulse here? Or?
I mean, yeah, I mean, a slight criticism here, if you're willing to hear it, is that you can't take a pulse with your thumb.
Right.
So as soon as I don't know if that's a criticism or a choice, because I look at this and then, from my perspective, knowing whether or not I would choose to use the pulse, like, you know, an increase in pulse or muscle reading, my assumption is this is a muscle reading demonstration, something that I know he can already do because his thumbs are on the insides of the wrist.
Right. Interesting.
So I'm being informed, I'm being informed that it's not anything to do with the pulse at that point. It's something to do with the resistance in the arms. Is what I'm seeing, if I'm seeing this for the first time.
That's a hard thing to get across for us, you know, when we're staging a scene like this and directing a scene like this is it muscle resistance or is he reading a pulse?
Well, you know, one of the great things about that is Patrick Jane would not dissuade somebody from believing that if he needed to. And here it looks great. You know, I think Simon does a fantastic job with this because I can't imagine trying to fake this.
Yeah.
It must be very difficult to fake it or to script it, you know, for it to be scripted. But I love the sense of it being free-flowing, and two, it reminds me of like a ballroom dance or something, you know?
That's what we always liked about it, the fact that, you know...
It's quite elegant.
Yeah, thank you. It was something that we strive for. We felt it could be a nice, elegant piece.
Yeah.
And we sort of did it before in an episode previously.
With Amanda.
With Amanda.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
Amanda, You know, for us in the editing of this sequence was how much to play of Simon's looks to the guest stars, especially Neil, who of course turns out to be the guilty party.
Yeah.
And we went back and forth over it. But again, we really like the fact that at the end of the day, the viewer can rewind it and connect the dots.
Yeah, no, giving them just enough to start to piece it together. Everyone wants that feeling of finishing a puzzle, don't they?
Yeah.
This is crazy. I had no idea that was there.
How could you direct us right to it if you didn't put it there?
I didn't. I don't know. But I didn't kill that man. I didn't.
She's right. She has nothing to do with the murder.
What?
I just used her as a decoy to lull the real killer into giving me clean directional cues.
Oh, come on. What are you talking about now?
Whatever way he didn't want us to go is the way that we went.
The real killer?
Yeah. You want to guess who it is?
Now, we say it, but we don't say how from obviously the reading of his eye movements.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, it's the two different skills, one of which we know that Simon's character has, the muscle reading idea, the resistance, and then a slightly removed version of that is something called non-contact reading, which is basically doing the same thing, but by observing it as opposed to feeling it.
Right.
And it's much more difficult to do the non-contact than the contact version. But this is a really good scene, like for mixing two things that are very closely linked in a way that if you're watching it with the knowledge and with, you know, with the information about these two worlds, I now piece those two worlds together. If not, it's still an amazing moment for... And either way it works, I think. You know, either way it's logical and consistent, or it's amazing. So you get the best of both worlds out of that.
Good. And that's basically it. He busts Neil.
Yeah.
And then the rest basically plays out.
And now it's cops.
And now it's cops.
Yeah.
And now it's cops.
Now there's some breaking glass and...
Humiliated you.
Now we're back into a fun element of the show where it gets a bit crazy. It's a bit Keystone Cops, which we can feel we can do on our show.
Yeah.
And then we pay the end of it absolutely on Simon.
Yeah.
You know, we don't continue on with the shooting. We just play it all on Simon's face. So.
And there we are. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Cheers, mate.
That was very interesting. Thanks for doing it.
How'd you do it?
You told me, husband. Our minds are in sync.